Hello and welcome to another episode of the Student Loan Planner Podcast. I'm your host, Travis, and I'm excited today to destroy the lies about financial planning that you might have been told. This is an exciting episode today because I think that financial planning is about living your ideal life, and it really allowed me to transform my own life, and I want that for you too. So, society says that you have to retire in your 60s. And let me tell you this, if that's your plan, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's great to work and be productive and find meaning. And if you find that in your job working 9 to 5 or, 7 to 6 or for the, medical folks out there, lawyers or whatever, I mean, I guess the lawyers, you're working on the weekends too, right? But, there's so much more that you have available to you in terms of your options than you maybe have ever dreamed possible. I know this because I have experienced the financial planning power in my own life, but also that I've got the credentials where I've been through this material, I've learned this material. I'm excited to say that one of my pandemic projects was just trying to get more education and get more knowledge about different things. So I got my Chartered Financial Analyst designation when I was a bond trader several years ago. And during the pandemic, I thought, it'd be kind of cool starting an insurance agency and getting it licensed in all 50 states. So I became a licensed insurance agent and got an agency established in all 50 states. And we launched our SLP insurance, disability and term life insurance quote tool on the site. You can see it in the menu bar. If you click on the recommended section, you'll see that drop down. And the thought process there was, okay, I want to be able to help you. And if you have, a huge investment you made in your education, which gives you higher than average earnings, some people will need to protect that because of family circumstances, and I should really be an expert in that. And then I thought, well, financial planning is super duper important, and it's not at all talked about enough. And so I thought, you know what I should do? I should get the CFP designation so I can help you more. So that's what I did. So now I've got the CFP designation, CFA, and I'm a licensed insurance agent in 50 states. And if you're listening to this, I hope your reaction is, I don't care, Travis, get over yourself. Because it is about you. That is the whole point of this, is getting you to your ideal life. So let's start first about what is wrong with the standard approach to financial planning. Let's talk about that. So what do most people do? Most people in every profession, I don't care if you're a dentist or a manual laborer or a teacher or a nurse or a lawyer or a physician or whatever you are, most people, you've got your bills coming in, you sign up for your retirement plan, maybe they match 4%, but you want to be responsible so maybe you say, okay, I'll just do 10 because I heard 10 is good. And then eventually you get old enough and you have some kids or a relationship or both, and you have a house and you have some equity in that house. Maybe you've done a couple mortgage cash out refinances or home equity line of credits that you've pulled to take the kids to Disney World or to remodel the kitchen, and you still have about half of the equity in your home that you've got available to you. And so maybe you say, okay, well, and then you go visit somebody who says they're a financial advisor, and they say, oh, great news, you can retire in 5 years. And so you talk to your HR, and then you find out you have some money in your health retirement account that you can use when you retire, and then you have enough money to live off of if you take out Social Security at the same time when you retire. And so you just decide, okay, I'm going to maybe take out a lump sum and pay off my house so I don't have to worry about my mortgage. I'm going to claim Social Security, and I just need to make it until I get Medicare so that I don't have to worry about medical bills. Then what people do is if they outlive their savings, which is a very common thing, what'll happen is you'll get to the point where eventually you will need somebody to care for you. Hopefully this doesn't happen to you, but this happens to most people, right? That don't pass away. You get old, you become less able to take care of yourself, and then you need to move to first an assisted living facility, which might help with a couple tasks of daily life, right? Like meals. Maybe it's really simple, just meals, but maybe it's also more things like helping you go to the bathroom. I'm being real here right now, y'all. To be fair, my wife's a physician, and driving her to work today, she was, having to listen to something about some sort of urinary incontinence surgery. So, I just bear everything, y'all. I hope it's okay. Because, real life, happens on what my wife is working on. So I know to look at Netflix, don't look at her computer. So anyways, like what happens is when you get to near the end of your life, people in nursing homes run out of money. And then actually, this is a little known fact, Medicaid picks up the bill for most nursing home care in America. About 2/3 of all Medicaid expenses actually just go towards middle-class people in their 80s and 90s, helping them pay for nursing home care they didn't save enough for because of how outrageously expensive nursing home care is. And it's like $80,000, $90,000 a year, right? And a lot of times people have run through all their savings, they gift their primary home to their kids, and they still need money left over to do that, and the government kicks in and picks up the bill for whatever nursing homes that take Medicaid. So that is very reductionist and maybe minimizes the enjoyment that somebody would get out of life from the time when they start the workforce to the time they pass away. There's a lot of life in between those two times, and I don't want to minimize the value of that. But I think that you can experience more than that. And that's why I want to talk about financial planning, because the idea that financial planning is so that you can retire in your 60s and save for retirement is such a lie. It's not true. And I'm not going to accuse anybody of saying this lie. I think it's more one of these myths versus a lie. That's probably a better word for it, where, financial planning is something for rich people, and, you hire your financial planner and they, talk about all the beaches you're going to visit when you, retire from your job, when you've hit your, 60th birthday, right? Or maybe you do it a little early. Maybe you go crazy and you say, oh my gosh, I'm going to retire at 55. Hot dog, right? But again, that's not the point of financial planning. The point of financial planning is so that you can live your ideal life as soon as possible, even in as little as 1 year. And so that's what I'm going for with talking about financial planning in today's podcast. So I want to talk about how people talk about financial planning as financial tools, and they don't talk about the use of those financial tools. When you think about financial planning, what do you think about? My mind would go to 401ks and retirement and a bunch of tools, right? What are some of these tools names? 401k, 403b, 457, backdoor Roth IRA, SEP IRA, solo 401k, defined benefit plan, profit sharing plan, simple IRA, brokerage account, health savings account, FSA account, 401a, right? Pension. All these different things are technical terms, and they're tools, okay? But here's the problem. So often when we're learning about investing and putting money away for our future, we look at all of these tools and we think, that these tools are, just we got to fill them up. That's the right approach. And, if we're thinking about, just these tools in and of themselves without thinking about what the purpose is for them, that's really useless. So let me make an analogy for you. Let's say that you owned a plot of buildable land and somebody asks you, what do you want to do with it? And your response is, well, I want to get a bunch of dump trucks and have it filled with the dirt and the land will be level. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, think about it. Like, it's the exact same approach to somebody who thinks about maxing their 401k every year as success. Okay, you've got a plot of buildable land. It needs to be leveled out. And so you take all the dirt and you put it in the dump trucks. Great. Like, eventually you'll be able to build, right? If you put a bunch of money in your 401k, eventually you'll be able to retire. But that's not the whole point. The point is, what do you want to build there? What kind of building do you want to build? What are the requirements of that building? What kind of load can it experience? What is it going to be, commercial, residential? What kind of return are you trying to get on it? All these, how are you going to build it? What sort of tools do you need to use besides the dump trucks? Like, all the Caterpillar kind of construction equipment, and how many workers are you going to need to put it together, right? You wouldn't build a building without a plan, yet people plan their financial future without a plan all the time. And why is that? It's because of inertia. It's just so easy to stumble through life not thinking about anything. And then when something unexpected comes up, like a recession or a health incident, or you lose your job, or a divorce or a premature death in the family, or an inheritance, all these things happen and people just sort of react, right? Something happens and they just sort of react. That doesn't need to be you, though, because what you can do is, if you take control of your financial life by making a financial plan that's customized for you, you can take all of these tools and turn them into a well-oiled machine that's going to get you to that end goal of having your built-up building, right, on your plot of land. That's going to happen way, way faster. It's kind of like what I'm learning with home renovation processes, right? I mean, initially, we talked to different people that were like, people that renovated homes and everything. They're like, what do you guys want? We're like, oh, a new kitchen and a new master bedroom and bathroom, or whatever the term is for that, right? Like the new, that's kind of what we're hoping for. And they're looking at us like, okay, like you need to hire a designer. You need to have somebody that's going to go through your plans in detail. They need to draw out what exactly you want. We need to talk about what kind of stone, what kind of budget, what kind of, appliances are you looking for? What are your needs for those appliances? And in other words, it was so interesting to me that I was just like, oh, wow. Like I could probably have found somebody that it would have done like a Home Depot, like kind of renovation, but like it wasn't like that wasn't what was going to give us what we wanted without having a specific plan. So the same thing is true for your life and what you're capable of doing in your life. So people confuse investing with financial planning, and companies want you to do that. So remember that investing is just a tool, and planning gives you the purpose of that tool and the how and the why and what are you using the investments for and what account should you use. Investment industry employees often don't want you to think about financial planning. Have you ever heard someone say they're a wealth manager or that they're an investment advisor or a broker? So there's different words for that. A broker, or a broker is probably more of like a drug company rep is the best analogy. A wealth manager might be, somebody that's like a specialist that has to do a lot of procedures, or is at least incentivized to do a lot of procedures. And the answer to everything is we're going to do, a surgery, without thinking too carefully about like holistic patient care and how to everything interact and those kind of things. An investment advisor is probably like a dermatologist, like a specialist. And a financial planner is a primary care doctor. They plan for your holistic financial wellness and plan for your dreams and goals. And this is going to be a little confusing. So, pause, rewind, just double listen to this section if it sounds kind of confusing. So there's different roles that financial industry professionals. A lot of times what you'll see with rich people is you'll have a big firm where you'll have CFPs that are doing the financial planning and then CFAs doing the portfolio management, or at least implementing the firm's investment strategies. And maybe they have, people without those credentials that are, doing the operational implementation of those things. I have both of those credentials. So like what the CFAs is like kind of like an investing specialist. And then the CFPs is really more deep into the financial planning, budgeting, insurance, investing, retirement, and kind of looking at things that are maybe like a mile wide but an inch deep. And then a CFA is going to be like, an inch wide, a mile deep on investing, right? And for firms that are dealing with more like low six-figure income clients, you might have a CFP doing both. You might have a CFA doing both too, right? These are like the credentials that investment industry professionals often have. And sometimes, your financial advisor might be, just outsourcing the investing because they're just focusing on the financial planning. The weird thing, though, is the way people charge for financial planning a lot of times is they say they do financial planning, but the money they make is all rolled up into earning a certain amount of your portfolio every year. So they might be earning 1% of your total portfolio, and that's their fee. And so their incentive is to gather and grow assets, not to help you do financial planning. They might say that they do that, and a lot of them actually do a great job of that. And it's just the way the industry has always handled getting fairly paid and having nice upside for people to want to do that career and be really committed to that career is to have that upside of charging a percent of someone's assets. And 1% historically has been the average fee. That's fallen in a lot of ways. But more recently, the industry has started splitting out the bills for those things. They might say, well, this is our fee for financial planning, which might be $5,000 a year or, $400 a month or something like that. And then the investment management fee will be a percent of your portfolio. But by splitting those two things out, they're making it very clear that they do both, but they view them as distinct duties to you. And I think they are distinct duties to you. What's interesting is there's financial professionals they do a fantastic job of financial planning and they call themselves wealth managers. Now there's wealth managers that don't do any financial planning at all. And I would say, unfortunately, that's probably the average person. The average investment professional is probably just mostly focused on helping you become richer over time. And that's a good thing, but that's not happiness optimizing. That's not thinking about answering the question, how do you live your ideal life in a year? Right? The typical financial person is like a professor who's a scholar teacher. Everybody knows that professors a lot of times do research and they teach. But anybody that knows anything about academia knows that promotions and pay and prestige, it's all based on the research and not on the teaching. So if you do teaching, it's kind of like out of the goodness of your heart. And that's kind of, unfortunately, kind of true of people in the financial, industry. Is there's this huge conflict of interest that makes everybody drawn to focusing on investing and making everything about investing and what investing return are you getting and how many, of your retirement accounts are you maximizing and are you using all of them? And oh my gosh, if you forget about doing the Roth IRA, then you will have to self-flagellate and you will have to do 10 Hail Marys and repent, because the backdoor Roth IRA is absolutely everything. I'm being joking here because I really do think it's just amazing how much people kind of care about the backdoor Roth IRA, but don't care about holistic financial planning when the latter is just far more important. So the danger is that you're going to pile up a bunch of money without a specific goal in mind, and you might be putting money in the wrong places because you might have a company helping you or a person helping you who's highly incentivized for you to just simply grow wealth. And that's very important, but it's not the goal, right? If you have accumulated a massive amount of, construction equipment or kitchen appliances or something like that, and you don't have a specific purpose for them, you have a lot more power to do things, but you're not using any of it. So financial planning is not super profitable compared to investing. And so you need to focus on both, but there's not an incentive that's a super powerful incentive to get people to focus on it for you. If you look at investing companies, let's think about big companies like Fidelity, BlackRock, iShares, Vanguard. These different companies, do they want to spend a lot of resources on doing financial planning, or do they want you to put more money into their mutual funds and their 401k plans? Anytime you see rules about encouraging, investors to pull money out of retirement faster or raising taxes on required minimum distributions for retirement accounts or any kind of thing that reduces the amount of assets that investment companies have to hold on to, those investment companies are generally opposed to that. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing necessarily or that these companies are bad, but these companies, investing companies, act in their best interest, which is not always aligned with yours, which is hopefully living your best life, however you decide to define that. And so I think that you want to think about your why, because the only way to say no to something is to have a bigger why. And sitting around until you're 65 to live your dream life or to live whatever you think your ideal life is not good enough. So if you think I want to cut my hours, or I want to take an entrepreneurial risk, or I want to have a family, or I want to buy a house, or I want to work, 3 days a week, or I want to increase my earnings, I want to go back and change my degree and do a whole different profession. All of those things are possible, and all of those things are possible in less than a year. I'm 100% positive of this because I've advised thousands of people personally, and I've seen the math of why it's possible. So let's talk about why it's possible for you as a student loan borrower with a lot of debt and a lot of education, more so than other people. So think about this. Your degree gives you financial planning superpowers. Why is that? You have higher median income than the typical American. You've got more tools available to you. Remember all those 40 whatevers I just talked about? 403B, 457, HSA, backdoor Roth, right? Brokerage accounts. Think about all the available tools for getting to your destination of your dream life that you have available to you as an educated professional, that if you're a construction worker working a 1099 as a 1099 contractor for some big, construction company and getting paid $20 an hour, you might not have hardly any of these tools available to you, or maybe you have one of those tools available to you. So you have a lot more sort of horsepower from your intellectual opportunities and your educational development that you can use to change your life with. You have access to better professional help. Let's be honest. If you make higher income and you have more education, people can explain things to you where you're probably comprehending it faster. You're able to pay the professionals more for their time, and you're going to have a more, on average, not always, a more competent class of professional available to help because you're paying more for that help. Now, there's obviously exceptions, right? There's amazing legal aid groups that provide, Ivy League level legal advice to lower income people. But because those folks are not financially incentivized to do that, that means that there's only a limited supply of people available to provide that help, and that means that help has to be rationed, and so then that's hard to access that help. But you don't have that issue as much as other people do with having, the kind of help that you need rationed by virtue of you not having enough resources to afford it. Also, if you want to change your profession, you already have a bunch of debt. So if you're paying on an income-based plan and you take on an additional $200,000 to go back to become a nurse practitioner, you're still paying the same percent of your income either way. And so there's really no marginal extra cost besides the few years of not earning an income that you would incur in exchange for going back and getting that extra education to change your career. Also, you have access to better mortgage options in many cases. A lot of people can put down 5% of their income, 0% even, with no PMI, and sometimes the interest rates are even better than what people can get going through the typical 20% down conventional mortgage. And then finally, you also have access to better insurance options and better insurance experts. People that get disabled working a corporate job, they're going to get probably $1,200 a month from Social Security Disability, and they're going to have to hire a Social Security Disability lawyer who's going to take a big cut of that. And then that's what they're going to earn is just a very meager amount of income for the rest of their career. Whereas, the options that you have available to protect your educational investment, if you're a surgeon, you can get this own occupation disability policy where if for whatever reason you can't do your exact same job, then you're going to get this massive tax-free check the rest of your life, inflation adjusted if you bought the right coverage. So in other words, I've just described why with financial planning and doing financial planning with the education that you have, like maybe the typical person has a rowboat available to get to the dream life they want, whereas you have a speedboat. The problem with the speedboat, though, is you can also go the wrong direction really quickly, and you still need a map and a point you're trying to go to have success, right? So just having that higher income does not guarantee success. But everybody that works with you wants you to have a bigger and bigger and faster speedboat. That's what the boat salespeople, right? They're making the money on how big the boat is. Their commission's based off how big the boat is. So everybody wants you to have the biggest boat possible instead of focusing on why do you have the boat? Where do you want that boat to go? What are you trying to accomplish with that? That's financial planning. So I've experienced this personally, and that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about financial planning is because I went into corporate America straight out of college because I was going to be an economics professor, and I couldn't cut it with the abstract math needed at a high enough level to make it into a top 10 program. And I felt like if I didn't make it into a top 10 program, I felt like it was better if I didn't go. And so then I just decided to go into corporate America. But then I got to corporate America and I was miserable. And one of the reasons is I felt like I wasn't living my best life. I felt like I was showing up the same thing every day, so to speak. And it was, I was waking up at like 5 a.m. to catch a train and then getting back at like 7. So it was like dark when I woke up, dark when I got home, and I was living for the weekends. And I didn't think that that was a sustainable way to live life. I didn't feel like I was using my talents for where the world's hunger was either. I felt like I was just sort of doing a job, which was good and honorable, but it wasn't something that like I just felt like, yeah, I'd probably retire at 50, but I'd probably, retire sad. And everything changed for me because I was really frugal. That's what I was good at, is just being frugal and investing but I didn't really know why. I think the main reason I was super frugal and good at investing early on was because of the privilege of having my grandfather in my life, who was sort of a child of the Depression, and watched his family lose their home and their farm. They lost their farm because my great grandfather was the county, the principal for the whole school for the whole county in the rural South. And during the Great Depression, he was paid in a IOU. No one was paying the county property taxes, and so they didn't have the money to actually physically pay him. So they gave him a script, like a bond almost, that says, we owe you, whatever amount for your annual salary. And then he took that to the bank, and the bank was like, we're not going to take that. You have to pay us in cash. And so because he couldn't pay that in cash, what he ended up doing was selling the promise to be paid in the future for his salary for pennies on the dollar, and they had to have the house foreclosed upon, and they took that small amount of savings that they had from selling the script to buy a much smaller house for their really large family, right? So that's why I kind of really looked up to my grandfather, who taught me a whole lot. And I think you probably might have somebody like this in your life. It might not be your grandfather, it might be your mom or dad or uncle or aunt or grandparents or brother or sister, right? Or spouse, I don't know, partner, whatever it is. But you look up to that person, you get inspired by that person, and so you kind of model their habits. So because of that trauma of like losing everything, and seeing his parents go through that, he was super frugal, so I was super frugal. So anyways, I'm this early 20-something-year-old, and I'm super weird, right? Really, really weird. Like, would get a Chipotle burrito bowl and would split it, and ask for extra rice and extra beans so that I could have 2 meals instead of one, and it was only like $6. It was $3 a meal. And that was me going out to eat. And I lived in a quasi-finished basement and bought everything on Craigslist, and, would like go to just extreme efforts to, drive a car that was good enough, but not something that was super exciting for sure. And then, rented a place that was a 3-bedroom, and we turned it into a 5-bedroom so I could cut our spending even more. So it was just like, I was a weird kid, right? And I think that I'm sharing this with you because I feel like we all have like weird habits, and they might be good or bad, or in terms of like meeting your goals. I was lucky in that Frugality like has this good side effect of building up capital that you don't know what you'll use it on, but you do have it eventually to use for something. Maybe you have that superpower. Maybe you might have the other thing where you came from like a family where you were really deprived, and now you have a higher income, and now you can finally enjoy, a new car and a nice new house, a new kitchen, whatever your thing is, right? There's no right or wrong answer here, by the way. The point is like I was drifting aimlessly, feeling despair over my situation with my job. Like I wasn't getting to achieve my goals, traveling the world and new and interesting people, coming up with new ideas and having time to work on interesting business problems. I was just doing the same kind of corporate existence and just not fulfilling my potential. So what is that for you? I say, I run my mouth. I talk too much about myself, right? For you, what is that for you? So for you, it might be feeling like you're burned out from the pandemic because of the standard of patient care has declined so much that you really wish you could take a different job that had less of a load on you, where you could really devote your full efforts to doing a fantastic job for your patients. Or maybe it's the dream of, you don't care about making $400K a year, but if you could make $250K a year and work 3 days a week and own your own dental practice, that would be amazing, but you don't feel like you can do that for 5 years from now. Maybe you really want to get married, but you feel like your student loans are preventing you from doing that. And so you have to just put that dream off because there's just no hope, because then your payments would spike, right? Maybe you have always wanted to have a family, but you feel like with the cost of daycare and the higher cost of housing and all the extra costs that come with that, you just feel like it's not responsible to bring more than one child into the world. So you just feel like you cannot physically have that dream of having a bigger family. So the reality, again, is using the tools of financial planning, which, by the way, I haven't said what a lot of those tools are. Yes, investing tools, those are some of the tools, right? But there's asset protection, cash flow management, tax planning. There's life goal investing. So investing like for specific life goals, like that buying a house is 5 years away. So you have a certain mix of like short-term bond funds that you put your money in so you get some return and don't have to save quite as much. Things like having a will, deciding if you need a power of attorney or not, having a idea of when you're going to reach financial independence and being comfortable with that, planning for big purchases. There's so much available to you that you might have not even thought about before. So the reason that you can use financial planning to live your dream life in less than a year, regardless of the size of your student loan debt, is because of all these tools. Now, you need the time to plan. Why 1 year, by the way? I say, a year until you can live your dream life. Why not say immediately? Well, I'm realistically optimistic. If you have too much spending relative to your goals, you cannot make that change from your job immediately because it's irresponsible, right? Your insurance would lapse, your bills would pile up, you'd go cash flow negative, you'd have a bunch of credit card debt. Then you'd be right back stuck where you were before and even less financially secure. That's not the point here. The point is that you would live your dream life in a responsible way where you feel excited about it and you know you've got this. So by setting a year as like the time frame, it's a lot more rapid than most people think that they can do, which is really exciting. And it gives you the time to plan. It gives you the time to make sure you have the right insurance coverage, and you'll have the right insurance coverage for after when you leave. It allows you to stash away some money in savings, to have the right amount of, cash in your bank account to not panic and jump back into the first job you get offered. It helps you make sure that you build anticipation for an exciting change in your life, and it helps you get other people in your family, if that applies to you. If you're not single, it helps you get those folks on board with this big change that you're thinking about doing. Now, I say less than a year. You could. Some people are financially stable enough that if they do some financial planning, they could make a change tomorrow or 2 weeks notice and change their job or something like that, or immediately start putting in offers for buying a business or buying a house. Right? Some of those dreams can be accomplished right away, but I'm just saying anybody can achieve their ideal life in a year with some planning. Now, I'm not saying that you can retire in a year. If your ideal life is I don't want to work at all, you probably can't do that in a year. But what you can do is make the change that's going to allow you to retire in, half the time that you thought you could do, right? And what financial planning helps you do is prioritize. So even if you're super wealthy, you still have trade-offs to make. You have to decide, is this thing more important than this other thing? Is this charity more important than this other charity to me? Is renovating our house more important than retiring, at 50 instead of 55? These are all kinds of trade-off decisions that when you have the framework of financial planning, you can finally answer them. So what do people's ideal life looks like? Like what do most people strive for? Like what are some ideas? If you're like, I don't know, my ideal life looks like, what are some things other people want? Well, financial independence, which is just meaning you don't have to work unless you want to, that's one path. Some people like the idea of retiring early. In my experience, though, since becoming a dad, most people like the idea of just working a little less to spend more time with their loved ones. Or people might like the idea of saying no to projects, patients, or procedures they don't like. So, if you want to end the night call, that can be a part of a financial plan. Why? Because you want to spend more time with your family and be more well rested so you have a more enjoyable lifestyle, right? Some people want to have more vacation days. Why? Because they like traveling and they want to see, more countries around the world before they're too old to enjoy them. Maybe others want to have the freedom of slowing down or picking up their workload at different times in their life. Maybe others want to take a big business risk to become their own boss. Why? To have control over the big decisions that affect them in their lives and to have the fun experience of growing their own mini empire, right? Others might want to buy their dream home and enjoy family life with a decked out mansion of everything they've ever wanted to have. Or you might want to have that vacation home on the lake to make lasting memories as a family. The reality is most people waste a lot of money and they don't use the tools available to them. And so that's why your typical person just kind of stumbles through life and retires at 65. People don't track their spending. There's lots of waste there. They don't think about wills or insurance planning till they're old. They pay a lot in taxes instead of thinking about tax planning to pay less because they don't look carefully at their options, and they don't plan for specific life events that they know will happen, but they just don't know how to plan for them. And then when suddenly the event happens, you're scrambling and you have to finance things with debt because you didn't, adequately think forward looking, what do you need to do to make this happen in a stress-free way. But the great news is this: once you understand the tools of financial planning and where you're going, what is your why, what are your big life goals, you can make trade-offs and get excited about chasing your treasure, which is your ideal life. So one way to think about your why is to think about this interesting list of 3 questions that I'm stealing from George Kinder, who's a life planner. The 3 questions go something like this. So if money was no object, if you just found out that you won $100 million lottery, what would you do tomorrow? Write down the things you would do tomorrow. Okay. Second, ask yourself, if your doctor delivered a horrible message to you that you have 5 to 10 years left to live, but you will be healthy during that 5 to 10 years, what are your next steps? What are your next things that you're going to want to do? And then finally, if your doctor comes and tells you, sorry, you've got 24 hours left to live, what do you regret not getting to be? So the first question is, remove all constraints. What does your life look like? The next question is, what do you want to accomplish in the very near medium term, short and medium term, that you really would enjoy, right? What big changes would you make in your life soon? And then the last thing is, what are you regretting? So you want to take advantage of the combination of those 3 answers and figure out what is your why. Now, once you've identified what is your why, what are your life goals, what do you want to do and achieve and experience, now you understand where you're trying to go. So once you build that financial plan, you now have the treasure map. You have the treasure map to your ideal life as soon as possible. And because of your degree, remember I said that instead of being on a rowboat or a pirate ship to seek out the treasure, you're on a speedboat. So you can get there far faster, and with the map, you're going to stay on course and not waste a bunch of energy drifting the wrong direction. And you'll put everything together and write a solid plan, and you will have an amazing dream-filled life where those dreams will be actualized and you will not be burdened by your debt. And that is the whole purpose of Student Loan Planner, is to help student loan borrowers live their ideal lives, remove anxiety, remove barriers, obstacles, destroy like limiting beliefs that you might have, and to do it with math, to do it with experience, to do it with knowledge, and telling you tools, tricks, tips, strategies, and resources that are available to you to do that. So I'm going to have more for you next week. But today, I just want the message to be, financial planning is not about retiring at 65, although it can be. It's about you living your ideal life and figuring out what action steps and tools you need to use and take advantage of to get you there. Hope you have a wonderful week. Travis of Student Loan Planner out.